The sun hung low over the Texas horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson as Samuel Martinez guided his weary horse down the familiar dirt road. 3 years had passed since he'd left this place. 3 years since he'd walked away from everything he'd ever known in anger and pain. Now, at 28, he was returning not as the rebellious son who'd stormed off, but as the sole inheritor of the Double M Ranch. The telegram in his saddlebag had been brief. "Your father is gone. Come home. Alina." Even now, her name sent a flutter through his chest. He'd tried so hard to forget her, to bury the memory of her dark eyes and gentle smile beneath years of hard work in the cattle towns of Kansas. But some wounds never truly heal, no matter how far you run. As the ranch house came into view, Samuel felt his breath catch. The 2-story adobe structure looked smaller than he remembered, its whitewashed walls now weathered and worn. The wooden porch where his father used to sit in the evenings sagged slightly, and several fence posts in the nearby corral leaned at odd angles. 3 years of neglect had taken their toll. But what stopped him cold wasn't the deterioration of the property, it was the sight of 2 women sitting on the front porch steps, even from a distance. He recognized them both. Alina, now 26, sat with her back straight and her hands folded in her lap, just as proper as ever. Her long black hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and she wore a modest blue dress that brought out the warmth in her brown eyes. Beside her sat her younger sister Rosa, who had grown from a gangly teenager into a beautiful young woman of 23. Rosa's hair flowed freely over her shoulders, and her green eyes, so unusual and striking, watched his approach with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Samuel's horse seemed to sense his uncertainty, slowing to a reluctant walk as they neared the house. The years fell away as he looked at Alina, and suddenly he was 25 again, standing in this very yard, his heart breaking as his father's harsh words echoed in his ears. "If you marry that Mexican girl, you're no son of mine." The memory still stung even now. He'd loved Alina with every fiber of his being, had planned to make her his wife despite his father's disapproval. But James Martinez, despite his own Mexican heritage, had become bitter and prejudiced in his later years. Viewing anyone who reminded him of his humble beginnings as beneath his family's status, Alina rose slowly from the steps, her movements graceful despite the obvious tension in her posture. Rosa followed, staying close to her sister's side like a protective shadow. "Samuel," Alina said softly, her voice carrying across the yard like a whispered prayer. "You came." He dismounted, his legs unsteady after the long ride, and approached them with cautious steps. Up close, he could see the changes that 3 years had wrought. Alina was still beautiful, perhaps more so, but there were lines around her eyes that spoke of worry and hardship. Rosa had blossomed into womanhood, her features more defined, her bearing confident despite the uncertainty of the moment. "I got your telegram," Samuel said, his voice rougher than he'd intended. "When did he—" "2 weeks ago," Alina replied, her hands twisting together. "It was his heart. The doctor said it was quick." Samuel nodded, a complex mix of emotions churning in his chest. Despite everything that had passed between them, James Martinez had been his father, the man who'd taught him to ride, to rope cattle, to read the weather in the clouds. Their final argument had been bitter and final, but that didn't erase 25 years of shared history. "Why didn't you leave?" The question tumbled out before he could stop it. "After I went away, after he made it clear you weren't welcome here." Rosa stepped forward, her green eyes flashing with indignation. "Because someone had to take care of him," she said sharply. "Because despite everything he said, despite how he treated us, Alina couldn't just abandon him." "Rosa," Alina said quietly, placing a gentle hand on her sister's arm. "That's enough," but Rosa wasn't finished. "He was sick, Samuel. Really sick, for months before he died. And Alina was here every day, cooking his meals, cleaning his house, tending to his needs. Even after everything he put her through, Samuel felt something twist in his stomach. "Alina, It doesn't matter now," Alina interrupted, though her voice trembled slightly. "He's gone, and you're here. That's what matters. The three of them stood in awkward silence, the weight of unspoken words and buried emotions hanging between them like morning mist. Finally, Samuel cleared his throat and gestured toward the house. I suppose I should. I should go inside. See what needs to be done? We've been maintaining things as best we could, Alina said quickly. The cattle are still grazing in the north pasture, though the herd is smaller than it used to be. Some of the fences need repair, and the well pump is acting up. But nothing that can't be fixed. Samuel studied her face. Seeing the exhaustion there, the worry lines that hadn't been there 3 years ago. You've been running this place? We both have, Rosa said, lifting her chin proudly. Alina knows more about ranching than most men twice her age. She's the reason this place didn't fall apart completely. A surge of gratitude and admiration washed over Samuel, followed quickly by guilt. While he'd been nursing his wounded pride and bitter anger in Kansas, Alina had been here, caring for the man who'd driven them apart, keeping his family's legacy alive. Alina, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, she replied. But her eyes betrayed the hurt she was trying to hide. We did what needed to be done. That's all. Samuel wanted to reach out to her, to bridge the chasm that 3 years of silence had created between them. But before he could find the words, Rosa spoke up. There's something else you should know, she said, exchanging a meaningful look with her sister. We're not just caretakers here, Samuel. We live here. This is our home now, Rosa. Please, Alina murmured, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. But Rosa pressed on, her protective instincts clearly in full force. Your father. Before he died, he changed his will. He left us the small house by the creek and 20 acres of land. Said it was payment for Elena's care, and ... double quotes. She paused, seeming to struggle with her words. In an apology for the way he'd treated us, Samuel felt his world tilt slightly. His father had softened toward Alina and Rosa. The man who'd been so rigid in his prejudices had found it in his heart to make amends. I don't understand, he said slowly. He was so angry when I left, so determined to keep you away from this family. Alina finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. People change, Samuel. Sometimes it takes facing death to realize what really matters. Their eyes met across the dusty yard. And for a moment, Samuel felt the years dissolve. He saw the girl he'd fallen in love with, the woman who'd captured his heart with her kindness and strength. But he also saw the hurt he'd caused by leaving, the abandonment she'd felt when he'd chosen his pride over their love. Alina. The sound of approaching horses interrupted his words, and all three of them turned to see a small group of riders cresting the hill to the east. Samuel counted for men, their faces hard and unfriendly, led by a stocky man with graying hair whom Samuel recognized. With a sinking heart, Marcus Brennan, he muttered under his breath. Elena's face went pale. They've been coming around more often since your father died, she said quietly. Making offers on the land, Brennan and his men pulled up in front of the house, their horses prancing nervously. The man himself leaned forward in his saddle, his cold blue eyes taking in the scene before settling on Samuel with obvious displeasure. Well, Brennan said, his voice carrying a mocking tone. If it isn't the prodigal son, finally come home to claim his inheritance. Samuel stepped forward, instinctively positioning himself between Brennan and the two women. Brennan. What brings you to my land? Your land? Brennan laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Boy, you've been gone for 3 years. A lot can change in that time. Debts pile up, taxes go unpaid, promises get broken. What are you talking about? Brennan reached into his coat and pulled out a folded document. Your daddy owed me money, Samuel. A lot of money. Gambling debts, mostly. But also loans he took to keep this place running after you ran off like a coward. Alina gasped softly, and Rosa moved closer to her sister's side. Samuel felt his jaw clench as he reached for the document, his eyes scanning the legal text quickly. This can't be right, he said, though his heart was sinking. The ranch is worth 10 times what's owed here. Maybe so, Brennan agreed with a cold smile. But according to that paper, I own a significant portion of this property now, and I'm prepared to be reasonable about it. His gaze shifted to Alina and Rosa, lingering in a way that made Samuel's blood boil. "I'll take the house and the surrounding 200 acres. You can keep the rest for now." "Like hell you will," Samuel growled. Taking a step forward, Brennan's men tensed, hands moving toward their weapons, but Brennan held up a hand to stop them. Samuel held up the bundle of letters. Father documented everything. Names, dates, witnesses. He even has testimony from other ranchers who lost money to Brennan the same way. Rosa's eyes lit up with hope. "Then we can fight this. We can expose him." "Maybe," Samuel said cautiously. "But it won't be easy. Brennan has money and influence. He owns half the businesses in town, and the other half owe him favors. Going up against him would be dangerous. More dangerous than letting him steal our home?" Alina asked quietly. Samuel looked at her, seeing the determination in her eyes, the quiet strength that had always drawn him to her. This woman had faced down Brennan's advances, had cared for his dying father despite years of mistreatment, had kept his family's legacy alive when he'd been too proud to stay and fight for it himself. "No," he said firmly. "Nothing's more dangerous than that." As if summoned by their words, the sound of horses approaching echoed across the yard. All three of them tensed, moving to the window to peer out into the darkness. 3 riders sat motionless in the moonlight, their faces hidden beneath the brims of their hats. They made no move to approach the house, simply sat watching like silent sentinels. "Brennan's men," Rosa whispered. "They've been doing this every night since your father died, just ... watching." Samuel felt his jaw clench. The intimidation tactics were working. He could see the fear in both women's eyes, the way they instinctively moved away from the window. "Not anymore," he said grimly. Moving toward the gun rack in the corner, "I'm going out there, Samuel." "No." Alina caught his arm, her fingers digging into his sleeve. "That's exactly what they want." "An excuse to start trouble?" "She's right," Rosa added. "Brennan's been trying to provoke a fight for months. If you give him what he's looking for, I'll have the sheriff out here faster than you can blink." Samuel looked down at Elena's hand on his arm, at the worry in her dark eyes, and felt his anger slowly cool to a more manageable simmer. She was right, of course. Brennan was too smart to make his move without proper justification. "Then what do you suggest?" He asked. Elena's grip on his arm tightened. "We be smarter than he is. We use your father's evidence to expose his cheating. We turn the whole town against him. And if that doesn't work..." Alina met his gaze steadily, and in her eyes, Samuel saw the same fierce determination that had first made him fall in love with her. "Then we fight," she said simply. "But we fight together this time. All of us." Samuel felt something warm unfurl in his chest at her. Words "we" together, after 3 years of solitude and regret. The simple pronouns sounded like poetry to his ears. Outside, the riders remained motionless for another few minutes, before finally turning their horses and melting back into the darkness. The message was clear: they were being watched, their every move monitored. But as Samuel looked at Alina and Rosa, at the stubborn set of their jaws and the fire in their eyes, he felt hope kindle in his chest for the first time in years. His father might be gone, and the ranch might be in danger, but he wasn't facing this fight alone. He had the 2 strongest, most determined women he'd ever known by his side. And with his father's evidence in hand, had a weapon that Brennan wouldn't be expecting. The next 2 days would determine the fate of everything his family had built. But tonight, for the first time since he'd received that telegram, Samuel Martinez felt like he might actually have a fighting chance. The war for the Double M Ranch was about to begin. Hush Hush. Chapter 3. The Heart's true territory. Dawn came early to the Double M, painting the sky in soft pastels that reminded Samuel of his mother's watercolor paintings. He'd barely slept, his mind churning with plans and possibilities. But the sight of Alina in the kitchen, her hair loose around her shoulders as she prepared breakfast, made everything else fade into the background. She moved with the same quiet grace he remembered, humming softly under her breath as she worked. Watching her, Samuel felt the familiar ache in his chest, the same longing that had driven him away 3 years ago and had haunted him every day since. "You're staring," Rosa observed dryly from the doorway. Making Samuel jump? I was just wondering what might have been. Rose's green eyes were knowing, but not unkind. Trust me, we've all done our share of that. Alina looked up from the stove, her cheeks flushing pink as she caught Samuel's gaze. For a moment, the years fell away, and they were young again. Stealing glances across the church pews and meeting in secret beneath the old oak tree by the creek. I should check on the cattle, Samuel said abruptly, needing space to think clearly. See how bad things really are? I'll come with you, Alina said quickly, then seemed to catch herself. I mean, if you'd like. I know where your father moved them last month. Samuel nodded, not trusting his voice. The thought of spending the morning alone with Alina, of having a chance to really talk without Rose's protective presence between them, was both thrilling and terrifying. They saddled their horses in comfortable silence, their movements synchronized by years of shared experience. Alina rode the same gentle mare she'd always favored, while Samuel chose a sturdy gelding from his father's small stable. The ride to the north pasture took them past the creek where they'd first kissed, past the grove of mesquite trees where they'd carved their initials, past all the landmarks of their young love. Neither of them spoke, but Samuel could feel the weight of memory settling around them like morning. The cattle were in better condition than Samuel had expected. Though the herd was smaller than it had been in his father's prime, Alina had clearly been working hard to maintain them, and her knowledge of each animal's temperament and needs was impressive. You've done an incredible job, Samuel said, as they counted the cows and checked them for signs of illness or injury. Father always said you had a natural gift for this work. Alina smiled at the praise, but there was sadness in her eyes. He taught me well. Even when he was angry about us, he never stopped sharing his knowledge. I think he knew I'd need it someday. They worked side by side for an hour, checking fences and water sources, falling back into the easy partnership that had always existed between them. It was Alina who finally broke the companionable silence. Why did you really leave, Samuel? The question hung between them like a challenge. Samuel had been expecting it, but that didn't make it any easier to answer. You know why? He said carefully. Father gave me an ultimatum. Choose between you and my inheritance. That's not what I mean. Alina stopped walking and turned to face him, her dark eyes serious. I mean, why did you choose to run instead of fight? The Samuel I knew would never have backed down from something he wanted. Samuel felt exposed under her direct gaze, as if she could see straight through to his soul. I was angry, he admitted. Hurt that my own father could be so cruel, so blind to what we meant to each other. I thought if I left, if I showed him I was willing to give up everything for you, he'd realize his mistake. And when he didn't. Pride, I guess. Samuel kicked at a clump of dirt, unable to meet her eyes. I was too stubborn to come back and admit I'd been wrong. Too afraid you'd moved on without me. Alina was quiet for a long moment. And when Samuel finally looked up, he saw tears glistening in her eyes. I waited, she whispered. For 2 years, I waited for you to come home. Every day, I'd watch that road, hoping to see you riding back to me. The pain in her voice cut through Samuel like a knife. Alina, I and then your father got sick, and I realized that waiting was just another form of running away. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, straightening her shoulders. So I stopped waiting and started living. I couldn't change the past, but I could choose how to face the future. Samuel reached for her, but she stepped back, shaking her head. You hurt me, Samuel. You left me to face your father's anger alone, to endure the gossip and speculation of the whole town. People said I was a fool for thinking I could marry above my station, that I should have known better than to reach for something beyond my grasp. Each word was like a physical blow, and Samuel felt his heart breaking all over again. Alina, please. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. More sorry than you'll ever know. But I'm here now. Doesn't that count for something? Are you? She asked quietly. Are you really here, Samuel? Or are you just visiting until the next crisis drives you away? The question struck at the heart of his deepest fear. Because if he were honest, part of him had already started planning his escape route. If they couldn't save the ranch, if Brennan succeeded in his schemes, Samuel had been considering selling whatever was left and starting fresh somewhere else. Somewhere without memories. Somewhere without the constant reminder of all his failures. But looking at Alina now, seeing the strength and resilience she'd developed during his absence, Samuel realized that running away again would be the greatest failure of all. "I'm here to stay," he said firmly. "Whatever happens with Brennan, whatever we face, I'm not leaving again. This is my home, and you're my heart." Elena's breath hitched, and for a moment, Samuel thought she might step into his arms. But then the sound of approaching horses shattered the tender moment, and they both turned to see Rosa galloping toward them, her face flushed with urgency. "Samuel." "Alina," she called out as she reined in her horse, "you need to come back to the house. Now." "What's wrong?" Samuel demanded, already moving toward his horse. "It's Sheriff Williams," Rosa said breathlessly. "He's at the house with a warrant. Brennan's claiming you threatened him yesterday, and Williams is here to arrest you." Samuel felt his blood turn to ice. This was exactly what Alina had warned him about Brennan was, creating a situation that would let him seize the ranch without opposition. "We have to go," Alina said urgently, already mounting her horse. "If they arrest you, Brennan will have free rein to do whatever he wants." The three of them rode hard toward the ranch house, dust clouds marking their passage across the scrubland. Samuel's mind raced as they traveled, trying to think of a way out of the trap that was closing around them. When they reached the house, they found Sheriff Williams waiting on the porch with two deputies. Williams was a decent man who'd been friends with Samuel's father, but he looked uncomfortable as he held up the warrant. "I'm sorry about this, Samuel," he said as they dismounted, "but I've got to take you in. Marcus Brennan swore out a complaint saying you threatened to kill him yesterday. That's ridiculous," Samuel protested, but he kept his voice calm and reasonable. "I told him to get off my property, nothing more. He's got witnesses," Williams said reluctantly. "3 men who'll swear they heard you make threats?" "Of course he did." Brennan's men would swear to whatever story their boss wanted told. Sheriff Alina stepped forward, her voice respectful but firm. "You've known the Martinez family for 20 years. You know Samuel's not the kind of man to make idle threats. If he wanted to hurt Marcus Brennan, he'd do it face to face, not with words." Williams nodded slowly. "I know that, Alina, but the law's the law. I've got to bring him in." Samuel saw the trap closing and knew he had limited options. If he resisted arrest, it would only give Brennan more ammunition. But if he went quietly, who would protect Alina and Rosa? "How long?" he asked quietly. "Judge Henderson is out of town until Friday," Williams admitted. "You'd have to stay in jail until then, 2 days. 2 days for Brennan to do whatever he wanted without interference." "Samuel." Elena's voice was steady, but he could hear the underlying current of fear. "Don't worry about us. Rosa and I can take care of ourselves." But Samuel knew better. Brennan was done playing games. With Samuel out of the way, he'd make his move. There would be nothing the women could do to stop him, unless... Sheriff, Samuel said suddenly, an idea forming in his mind. "I'll come with you willingly, but I want to make a formal complaint first. Against Marcus Brennan, for fraud and extortion." Williams raised an eyebrow. "You got proof of that?" Samuel thought of the letters hidden in his mother's jewelry box. His father's careful documentation might not be enough to convict Brennan in court, but it would be enough to launch an investigation. And investigations took time that might be enough to expose Brennan's schemes to the whole community. "I do," Samuel said firmly, "and I want to file the complaint before you take me in." Alina caught on immediately. "I'll ride to town with you," she said, "as a witness to the complaint, and I'll stay here to watch the ranch," Rosa added, her green eyes flashing with determination. "Let Brennan try something. I've got Father's rifle, and I know how to use it." Samuel felt a surge of pride and love for both women. They understood the stakes, understood what needed to be done, and they were willing to fight for their home, even if it meant facing danger alone. As they prepared to ride to town, Alina caught Samuel's arm, pulling him aside for a moment of privacy. "Be careful," she whispered, her dark eyes fierce with emotion. "Brennan's desperate now, and desperate men do dangerous things." "I will," Samuel promised, covering her hand with his. And Alina, what I said earlier about you being my heart, I meant it. Whatever happens, I need you to know that. Tears sparkled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. I know, she said softly. And Samuel, I never stopped loving you. Even when I hated you for leaving, I never stopped loving you. The admission hit Samuel like a physical blow, filling him with hope and determination. Alina still loved him. Despite everything he'd done, despite the pain he'd caused, she still loved him. Now, all he had to do was stay alive long enough to prove he deserved that love. As they rode toward town, Samuel felt the weight of his father's letters in his saddlebag, and the even greater weight of Elena's words in his heart. The next few days would determine everything's the fate of the ranch, their future together, and whether love could truly conquer the forces arrayed against them. But for the first time since coming home, Samuel felt ready for the fight.